The ocean itself, eternal and mighty, had whispered its stories onto the shores of Somalia for millennia. But at the dawn of a new millennium, its calm murmur gave way to a sinister roar that echoed across the globe. This is the tale of how despair, born from depleted waters and shattered nationhood, transformed into a highly organized, bloody enterprise, forcing humanity to recall long-forgotten terms: piracy and sea wolves. It is the story of Somalia, the story of ordinary fishermen compelled to become ruthless predators, and the story of the global response to a threat born in the very heart of the Horn of Africa. Picture the coast of Somalia in the early 2000s. The nation, torn apart by decades of civil war, had plunged into utter chaos. The central government had effectively lost all authority, with real power residing in the hands of warlords and various clan factions. And within this pervasive vacuum of lawlessness, it seemed nothing could disrupt the accustomed, albeit harsh, way of life, were it not for one fateful circumstance: the ocean itself. The ocean, which had generously fed the Somali people for centuries, became a victim of its own boundless bounty. Amidst the general destruction and endless misfortunes, a new wave of devastation crashed upon Somalia's coast. Ruthless, illegal fishing. Foreign trawlers, often arriving from Europe and Asia, exploited Somalia's complete lack of control, freely invading its exclusive economic zone. They ruthlessly depleted the rich fishing grounds, leaving behind only empty nets and deeply impoverished local fishermen. For these people, whose lives had always been intertwined with the sea's bounty, this was far more than just tangible economic damage. It was a betrayal, a disregard for their ancestral rights, a complete destruction of their very existence. They took all our fish, they took our sea, they left us to starve. Many Somali fishermen described their despair. In their eyes, foreign vessels were not just border violators, but merciless invaders stealing the last vestiges of what they possessed. And when their own government proved unable or unwilling to protect its citizens, people began seeking their own, often perilous, avenues. The first instances of attacks were sporadic, chaotic, born of desperation. Small, fragile boats, frequently armed with old Kalashnikov rifles and homemade grenade launchers, ventured into the open sea to, as they saw it, defend their waters. It was a form of retribution, a desperate yet natural attempt to reclaim control of what was rightfully theirs. But soon, these scattered actions began to take on a very specific, sinister form. The crucial role in this unsettling transformation was played by an undeniable factor: organization. Somali society, despite its inherent fragmentation, preserved strong clan ties, rooted deep in centuries past. It was these, paradoxically, that managed to serve as a solid foundation for building a new criminal structure. Furthermore, the pervasive absence of the rule of law and the frighteningly high level of corruption in neighboring states, where the stolen loot was eventually sold, created truly fertile ground for the rapid development of this new craft. Over time, these dispersed groups began to act with increasing sophistication and daring. They started using faster and incredibly maneuverable vessels, so-called skiffs, equipped with truly powerful engines. These swift boats allowed them to catch up even with the largest and most cumbersome cargo ships, slicing through the sea's surface. Experienced pirates also adopted the very tactics, carefully observing the actions of well-organized international terrorist groups. Impeccable coordination, thorough reconnaissance, lightning-fast, sudden attacks. The first, most vulnerable victims were small trading vessels, as well as peaceful fishing trawlers, which, like easy prey, fell into their laid nets. But appetites, as often happens, grew with each new successful raid. And then, in 2005, the whole world heard with alarm about the first truly major capture. A huge oil tanker named plundered was stopped and completely hijacked by Somali pirates, a shocking confirmation of their growing might. This incident sounded like a sinister omen. It became obvious. The threat had broken free of local waters, acquiring a truly international scale. A new, troubling era of high-yield maritime piracy had begun. Giant bulk carriers, enormous tankers, and spacious container ships were chosen as targets, any vessel capable of bringing a substantial ransom. The pirates acted with truly frightening coordination and professionalism. They mastered the art of stealthy approach, lightning-fast boarding, and swift capture of the crew as hostages. Their demands were astronomical, and most regrettably, they were often met. Ship owners, weighing the colossal losses from downtime, the inevitable loss of expensive cargo, and most importantly, prioritizing the lives of their sailors, were forced to concede and pay the demanded sums. Millions of dollars, changing hands, spawned a new criminal elite in Somalia. Those who were just simple, impoverished fishermen yesterday suddenly became wealthy, heavily armed, and ready to defend their newfound assets at any cost. They erected new homes, acquired an impressive arsenal of weapons, and generously gifted local officials, securing their favor. This veritable golden reign, it seemed, served as undeniable justification for their actions in the eyes of many. Those who saw them as brave fighters for justice, punishing the ruthless robbers of their homeland, failed to notice the true nature of what was happening. For behind the dazzling shine of American dollars lay a much darker, repulsive reality. A reality steeped in fear, humiliation, and inevitable death. Hundreds of brave sailors from various corners of the world became silent victims of brutal pirate raids. Their lives, full of plans and hopes, transformed in an instant into an impenetrable nightmare. Hostages, sometimes languishing in captivity for many months, endured unimaginable, monstrous conditions. A constant, paralyzing fear of violence, agonizing uncertainty about their own fate, and a complete, painful absence of connection to loved ones. All these hardships left an indelible, deep mark on their ravaged psyches. Investigating such cases presented a true puzzle. The events unfolded across vast, virtually uncontrolled maritime expanses. The perpetrators were elusive beings, expertly armed to the teeth, operating in a region where the law was often merely a convention. Compounding this were an insurmountable language barrier, profound cultural differences, and a persistent distrust of authorities, which collectively complicated the work of law enforcement many times over. One of the first high-profile incidents, which captured the world's attention, occurred in 2008. Pirates seized a Saudi supertanker named Sirius Star, carrying an impressive cargo of 2 million barrels of oil. A ransom of $3 million was demanded for the release of the vessel and its crew. This event was truly unprecedented. It was followed by other audacious seizures: the French cargo ship Pontos and the Ukrainian cargo ship Fina, which carried tanks and other combat weaponry. The final incident became a true international sensation, vividly demonstrating the full depth and complexity of the situation. A captured Ukrainian vessel, carrying 20 individuals, citizens of Ukraine, Russia, and Latvia, fell into the hands of Somali pirates. Negotiations for a ransom payment stretched on for many long months. The Ukrainian government, seeking to avoid further escalation, proceeded with the utmost caution. After a prolonged period of tense discussions, the ransom was paid, and the crew, exhausted but unharmed, was released. However, this event proved to be merely a calm before the storm. A key moment in understanding the problem of Somali piracy was realizing that it was not simply an act of banditry, but a meticulously planned, well-organized criminal enterprise. Investigations uncovered extensive networks involved in everything from intelligence gathering and detailed attack planning to supplying pirates with weapons, conducting negotiations, and subsequently distributing the received ransoms. The ringleaders of these criminal syndicates, preferring to remain in the shadows, hidden away in the remote corners of Somalia, remained beyond the reach of justice. The global community, finally grasping the full seriousness and scale of this threat, moved to decisive action. Multinational naval forces, primarily under the command of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Union, were formed. These forces began actively patrolling the waters off the Somali coast, creating a significant obstacle to further pirate activity. Their mission, at first glance, seemed exceedingly clear: to intercept the vessels of elusive pirates, to rescue those held captive, and of course, to bring the criminals into custody. However, even with constant naval patrols, this struggle was never easy. The pirates astonished with their ingenuity. They had mastered the tactic of using so-called motherships, usually captured small vessels that allowed them to expand their zone of influence, operating much further from their usual shores. They masterfully evaded pursuit, finding reliable refuges in coastal waters where cumbersome warships often found it difficult to reach. And the very process of detaining pirates gave rise to new, no less complex questions. Where should the captured be taken? Under what system should they be tried? Not all nations were prepared to host and prosecute captured sea brigands on their territories. International law governing such matters was still in its nascent stages, leaving numerous loopholes and uncertainties. There were instances when pirates were set free, either due to fear of legal hurdles or simply seeing no other recourse. Nevertheless, through persistent, though unhurried efforts, certain results were achieved. Special procedures were developed for the pursuit and apprehension of sea brigands. Agreements were forged with several states, notably Kenya and the Seychelles, for the transfer of those apprehended to facilitate further prosecution. A landmark moment arrived with the case of 10 Somali pirates seized aboard the American vessel USS Boxer. They were transported to the United States of America and brought to trial under laws that stipulated life imprisonment for piracy. This set a crucial precedent, demonstrating the global community's resolve to confront this menace. Yet, even when pirates were arrested and tried, the fundamental question remained: what were the true roots of this phenomenon? The answer lay at the very heart of the Somali tragedy: a complete collapse of statehood, the absence of law, illegal fishing, and profound poverty. Until these issues are resolved, until Somalia's waters are safe for its own citizens, the very problem of piracy will very likely continue to exist in one form or another. The psychological drama playing out in the souls of the sailors remained less visible, but no less significant. Imagine being confined to a small space, under constant threat, unable to contact loved ones, with no knowledge of what the coming day might bring. The fear, piercing to the very depths, was palpable. Some of them recounted how they fought to preserve their dignity, how they found the strength to support each other, how they lived with the dream of the day they would return home. Among these individuals were those who, despite the horror they had endured, had not lost their inner strength. They returned to their usual work, but with a completely different, more profound perspective on life. They became a kind of messengers, sharing with the world the truth of what Somali piracy truly is. Public opinion, at first, found itself divided. Some saw pirates merely as desperate men fighting for their rights. Others, however, viewed them as ruthless criminals threatening global trade. Yet, as accounts of captured sailors' fates began to surface and the first reports detailing their horrific treatment were published, public opinion steadily shifted towards a strong condemnation of piracy. The influence of mass media on this evolving situation proved truly colossal. It was through a succession of reports, poignant photographs, and candid interviews that the entire world truly came to understand the sheer scale of this alarming problem. But, as alas, so often happens, the initial fervor and sharp interest in this subject gradually began to wane. And perhaps it was precisely this slow cooling of public attention that became one of the key reasons why the problem was never definitively and irrevocably resolved. The conclusion to this long-standing conflict proved far less straightforward than many would have preferred. International naval forces, observing a gradual decline in pirate attacks, began to systematically reduce their presence in dangerous waters. Concurrently, entirely new, more effective security measures were developed and implemented for vessels, including armed guards on board, which had already managed to prove their undeniable efficacy. But the story of Somalia and its infamous pirates is far more than a tale of sea brigands. Above all, it is a narrative of how profound social and entrenched political issues can rapidly transform, birthing genuine global threats. This account tells how deep despair can become a potent driver for organized crime. It speaks to the fragility of the world order, how easily the unseen yet vital balances we've grown accustomed to can be shattered. Ultimately, confronting Somali piracy is more than just a succession of naval operations and complex legal proceedings. It is, first and foremost, a mission to restore law and order on Somali soil itself, to secure a dignified future for its people. It is about returning the ocean to its original purpose, as an inexhaustible source of life, not a stage for criminal games. We can only hope that the bitter lessons learned from this dark chapter will help us avoid similar catastrophes in the future. And the main question that troubles and remains unanswered: how many more unseen threats lie dormant in the shadows of unresolved global problems?